Right, everyone, I hope everything is going okay and you've just finished your end of Unit 22 Trigonometry 2 test and that you've been fairly confident with this topic so far. So we're going to go through the answers. You need to remember to try and rag it for me as you would be going through, because when we've gone through all the answers, I would like you to fill in the Google form that tells me whether you got red, amber, green on each question and what your total score was, and then your self-assessment bit about what went well and even better if at the end. Right, let's start by having a look at question one then. So question one was a Pythagoras in 3D question. So it's got a couple of stages to it to be able to get the full marks. You're aiming to work out the line AB, but before we can do that, we're going to need this dotted line at the bottom here that they were hinting at in the exam question. I've labelled it C just so that you can see where things are coming from. So that triangle on the bottom of the shape, okay, is going to be this one here, which has got 80 centimetres by 60 centimetres. So using Pythagoras, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we've substituted in 80 squared plus 60 squared. When we add them two together, we get 10,000. And when we square root, we've worked out this line at the bottom here is 100 centimetres for the first working out mark. Following on from that, we've then got this right angle triangle here that connects A to B down to my C and back again, which I've drawn out for you there. So you can see it's now got a base of 100 centimetres and a height of 120, and we need to plug that in to our Pythagoras again. So 120 squared plus 100 squared, add them together and we get 24,400 for the second working out mark, and then you need to square root that in the end and you should get 156.2049, which you need to round appropriately. So 156.2.20, even 156 would get you the third mark. So remember to decide whether you are red, amber or green on question one for me. Right, if we have a look then at question two, so this was using trigonometry in 3D. On this one, we're asked to work out the angle that connects EC, which is this line here, with the plane ABCD, which means the base of the cuboid. So we're actually working out this particular angle here at C. Before we can do that though, we need to have another side of the shape. So we need to work out AC to start off with. So I've drawn out the triangle here, ABC. We know that there's a right angle at B. We've got 8 centimetres there and 14 centimetres there. So we can use Pythagoras again to work out the line AC. So 8 squared plus 14 squared is going to give me 260, and square root that to give me the length AC. So you get the mark for the square root of 260, or if you've got it in simplified form, which your calculator should do, so 2 root 65, or a decimal 16.124, etc. But remember, if you're using the decimal, you shouldn't be rounding that until the very end of the question, so you need to keep that as it is, or ideally use the exact form, which is root 260. That's your first mark then. Hopefully then you can see we need to draw out that triangle again. So that's now going to be the triangle A to E to C. We know it's got a height of 7 centimetres, and we know that line AC is root 260, or your 16.1, etc. And then you need to label your three sides with your O, A, and H. So we know at this point the opposite and the adjacent are useful, so it's going to be TOA. So my formula is tan theta equals opposite over adjacent. That's going to be tan theta equals 7 over the root 260. And you get a working out mark for correctly plugging that into the correct formula. If you've made a silly error, for example, up here and you've got 25, okay, if you've got tan theta equals 7 over your answer, which was 25, then you would get this working out mark, even though this one is wrong. So just be mindful that if you've used it correctly, you would get that working out mark, but you wouldn't get the final answer mark. Okay, and to get your final answer, we're going to inverse tan to find out the angle of 7 over root 260, which is going to give us 23.4667. And then again, you just need to round appropriately on that one to decide on your final answer to get the third mark. So 23 would be fine, 23.47, 23.5 would all get you the 3 marks on that one. So rag for question 2. Right, question 3 and 4 then were your exact trig values. So you either had to learn the 2 triangles for this one or to learn the finger trick that you watched on YouTube. Okay, so for the acute angle where sine and cos have the same value, we should recognise that sine of 45 is root 2 over 2 and cos of 45 is root 2 over 2, and hence it's the 45 degrees where they both have the same value on that one. for the mark for question 3. And then for question 4, cos of 30, again, either using the triangles or your finger trick to work out that it is root 3 over 2 for a mark on that one. So you can rag for question 3 and 4 your exact trig values. Then if we have a look at question 5, so for question 5 is just being able to use SOHCAHTOA accurately. So on this one, if we label our triangle, we've got our OA and H. It's asking us for sine of x, so hopefully you recognise that sine of an angle is opposite over hypotenuse. So in this case, that's going to be using the 3 and the 5. So sine of x is 3/5, and hence 3/5 your answer for the first mark. And then on part B, we again label our triangle, so our OA and H. We recognise that O is useless, so A and H link to K. So in this case, it's going to be cos of y equals adjacent over hypotenuse, which for us is 3 over 6, which simplifies to a half. And again, either using your exact trig values, you recognise that cos of 60 gives us a half, so we can work it out that way. Or because you're allowed a calculator, you can do cos to the -1 of a half and get 60 as your answer for that. So 2 marks for question 5 for you to rag on that one. And then question 6, we're looking at working out the area of a parallelogram. Now, you've got the formula for parallelogram, which is your base times your height. So you could have tried to do some working out with that one. It is definitely not 16 times 12, because 12 is not a perpendicular height, it's the slant length. So you cannot do that one. But what you can do quite easily is to split the parallelogram in half, so that you end up with 2 equal triangles, and we can work out the area of a triangle and then double it. So your first mark comes from using half AB sine C by correctly substituting the values into the formula. So it's a half times 12 times 16 times sine of 72, which comes out at 91.3, etc. Remember not to round at the end. Then we've got 2 equal triangles, so we're going to double that. So as long as you've got 2 times your answer, you've got the second working out mark, which then gives you 182.6028, etc. And round appropriately. So 183, 182.6, 182.60 would all get you the final 3 marks on that one. So you can then rag for question 6, area of a triangle. Then we start moving on to the stuff that you haven't really seen before, okay? So the stuff that's been new for this topic. So question 7, we hopefully recognise the fact that we've got 2 angles in this question. We've got a side and we're trying to find a second side. So 2 sides, 2 angles means it's going to be the sine rule. Your standard sine rule formula then, A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C, if you wanted that one, but it's always pretty much the useless one. We then need to fill it in correctly, so we've got y over sine 35 equals 15 over sine 70 for the first mark. Okay, that can be the other way around, so you can have 15 over sine 70 equals y over sine 35, it's the same thing. If we then want to work out y, we need to get rid of this divided by sine 35, so we're going to multiply both sides by sine 35, that's going to go on the top of our fraction, and then you can just plug that into your calculator to give you a final answer of 9.15580, etc. So again, round appropriately, 9.2, 9.16, okay, would get you the 2 marks on that one. So as long as you've rounded correctly, you can then rag for question 7. Then if we have a look at question 8, so on this one, we were trying to work out the missing angle x, and we've got 2 sides, an angle, and trying to find the second angle. So 2 sides, 2 angles tells me sine rule. Remember, because we're trying to find an angle, it's the flipped sine rule. So it's sine of capital A over little a equals sine of capital B over little b. And again, could have the C part on the end if you wanted. Again, once you've filled in the formula correctly, so sine x over 6 equals sine of 125 over 14, we've got a mark. You would get that if you've got it upside down as well, so you haven't used the angle one, but you've used the length one. As long as you've correctly filled it in, you would get a mark, and you can also have it if you've got the left-hand side and right-hand side switched around as well. At this point then, we want to work out sine x, so we need to multiply both sides by 6, giving us sine x equals 6 times sine of 125 over 14. When you plug that into your calculator, you should get 0.35, etc. Okay, so you get a second mark for that one. And then your final step to try and work out your angle is we need to use inverse sine of our 0.35, etc., which gives us 20.5524, which you just again need to round appropriately. So 20.55, 20.6, or even 21 degrees would get you the mark on question 8, which you can now rag. And then if we start having a look at question 9, so question 9 we want to use to find the angle x. Okay, so on this one we've got 1, 2, 3 known sides and 1 missing angle, so that tells me it's the cosine rule. We're trying to find an angle, so it could be this formula that you've tried to learn, okay, which we then need to correctly substitute in all the values. So it's going to be cos of x equals 14 squared plus 25 squared minus 36 squared over 2 times 14 times 25. Remember, the A is already labelled there correctly, but if it wasn't, you could do that to make sure that the cos part of A is the angle that we're interested in. So your first mark for that one. Simplify that down, we end up with negative 475 over 700 for a second mark, and then you inverse cos that to get your final answer of 132.732, which you need to round appropriately. Alternatively, okay, which is sometimes if you just want to learn the one formula is the better way so that you can rearrange it, but it's completely up to you which method you want to use. So if you went with the normal formula, a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos a, you fill in all your values like this one, and you get the first working out mark. And again, we've got a negative 700 cos x when we simplify, so we want to add that in. We then end up wanting to get rid of the 1,296. We're going to take that away from both sides, divide by 700, and we end up here with what we had here. There's an awful lot more working out, but it's still fully valid if you want to use that method, and then inverse cos it to get the same answer there. So again, as long as you've rounded appropriately, you've got your 3 marks for question 9. So it's probably one of the trickier ones. And then finally, question 10, we've now got a non-right angle triangle. We've got 2 sides, want to find the third side, and 1 angle. So 3 sides, 1 angle tells me cosine rule again, which is the standard length formula. We get your first mark then for correctly filling in all the values. So x squared equals 6 squared plus 9 squared minus 2 times 6 times 9 times cos of 120. Remember, label it how you want it labelled. So the angle we're interested in is this one, so we want our capital A there. B and C don't matter which way round they go. Okay, tidy that up then. We've got x squared equals 117 minus 108 cos 120. That's going to tidy up to give us x squared equals 171. Remember to square root it at this point, so you got your working out mark here, and you should get 13.0769, etc. So 13.08, 13.1, or even 13 would get you the full 3 marks. Okay, so slightly different this time. I want you to go on and fill in the form. That will then let me know when you've had a go at the test and what your score is and what areas it looks like you need to work on. On the year 10 results sheet, then I will put in whether you need to be doing T1, T2, etc., or extension for you to have a go at those questions, and then you can come back and give it a go. Most of them this time are going to be worksheet based because you've done a lot of the tasks on My Maths for this topic already. Okay, please let me know if you've got any questions or problems or anything you want me to go through in further detail to help you. Right, take care everyone. Bye.